China-India relations in early 2025 continued the momentum of exchanges and stabilization seen in late 2024, as India's Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri kicked off his trip to Beijing on Sunday, in another indication that China and India are restoring a mechanism to enhance dialogue and work on specific issues. Liu Jianchao, head of the International Department of the Communist Party of China Central Committee, met with Misri on Sunday, and the two sides exchanged views on jointly implementing the important consensus reached by the leaders of the two countries, strengthening exchanges and dialogues, and promoting the improvement and healthy and stable development of China-India relations, as well as international and regional issues of common concern. According to a press release by the Ministry of External Affairs of India, Misri's scheduled Beijing visit lasts from January 26 to 27, during which he is expected to attend a meeting of the Foreign Secretary-Vice Minister mechanism between India and China. New Delhi also claims that the resumption of this bilateral mechanism flows from the agreement at the leadership level to discuss the next steps for India-China relations, including in the political, economic, and Plato people domains. Indian media outlet The Hindu said that Misri, who previously served as India's ambassador to Beijing, will meet Chinese Vice Foreign Minister Sun Weidong in Beijing. Beijing. Sun served as Chinese ambassador to India from 2019 to 2022. Specifically, issues to be discussed include the resumption of direct flights between India and China, issuance of visas, particularly for businesspersons and journalists, and ironing out trade issues, according to The Hindu. At a press briefing on January 24, Chinese spokesperson Mao Ning said that we welcome Foreign Secretary Shri Vikram Misri's trip to China for the meeting of the Foreign Secretary-Vice Minister mechanism between China and India. She stressed that last October, Chinese President Xi Jinping and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi reached important common understandings on improving and growing bilateral relations when they met on the sidelines of the BRICS summit in Kazan. Both sides agreed to improve and strengthen interactions, resume institutional dialogues as well as exchanges and cooperation in various fields and work to bring China-India relations back on the track of sound and steady growth at an early date, Mao said. In the eyes of some observers, China-India relations have shown signs of thawing and stabilizing despite a border standoff and a complex geopolitical context. Before Misri's China visit, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi met with Indian National Security Advisor Ajit Doval in Beijing in December 2024. The two senior diplomats, also as the special representatives, reached a six-point consensus on border questions, less than 2 months after the two countries announced they had reached resolutions on border issues on October 21. On October 23, 2024, Chinese President Xi Jinping met with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi on the sidelines of the 16th BRICS summit in Kazan, urging China and India to strengthen communication and cooperation, enhance strategic mutual trust, and facilitate each other's pursuit of development aspirations. During a meeting with Indian External Affairs Minister Subrahmanyam Jaishankar on the sidelines of the G20 summit in Rio de Janeiro in December, Chinese top diplomat Wang Yi stressed that China and India should strive to make practical progress as soon as possible in areas such as resuming direct flights, exchanging journalists, and facilitating visa issuance processes. Hu Zhiyong, a professor from the Zhejiang International Studies University and also a research fellow at the Institute of International Relations at the Shanghai Academy of Social Sciences, told the Global Times that the recent tendency of stabilization in China-India ties comes as the Indian government seeks to deal with the uncertainty brought about by the new U.S. administration, and at the same time, New Delhi also recognizes the closeness and interdependence of the two's economies and trade, despite restrictions imposed on Chinese companies in India. According to data from the Global Trade Research Initiative, GTRI, China overtook US as India's top trading partner in the fiscal year 2024, with bilateral trade reaching $118.4 billion. Imports from China increased by 3.24% to $101.7 billion, while exports to China surged by 8.7% to $16.67 billion. Who said that he is cautiously optimistic about future China-India ties, as it's beneficial for the two sides to sit down and talk to each other, while we should also be aware of the complexity in the ties, especially the duplicity of the Indian side. Who mentioned the latest Quad foreign ministers meeting and the talks between Jianchao and U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, which were held in Washington one day after Donald Trump's inauguration. Despite not naming China directly in their public release, diplomats said they oppose actions that seek to change the status quo by force or coercion, which was believed to be alluding to China. China's attitude toward further stabilizing and developing China-India relations is sincere and pragmatic. However, the Indian side needs to make efforts to respond with more goodwill, Hu said. The expert stressed that interactions and cooperation between countries should be based on equality and mutual benefit, which requires India to treat its neighbor with a pragmatic, positive and responsible attitude, instead of an opportunistic diplomatic approach of talking to China when needed, while suppressing China on other occasions. Let's analyze Chinese expert statement. India is talking to China when needed, while suppressing China on other occasions. As of January 2025, China-India relations are cautiously progressing toward normalization after years of tension, particularly following the 2020 Galwan Valley clash. In October 2024, both nations reached a significant border patrol agreement, allowing for the resumption of patrolling in disputed areas such as the Depsang Plains and Jianchao. This agreement has been pivotal in de-escalating long-standing hostilities and restoring pre-2020 positions along the line of actual control, LAC. The 75th anniversary of diplomatic relations between India and China in 2025 presents an opportunity for both countries to further mend ties. High-level engagements, including potential visits by Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi to China for the Shanghai Cooperation Organization (SCO) summit, are anticipated to foster dialogue on. However, several uncertainties could influence the trajectory of this rapprochement. The return of Donald Trump to the U.S. presidency introduces variables such as potential tariffs and shifts in U.S. foreign policy, which may affect China-India dynamics. Additionally, sensitive issues like the Dalai Lama's succession could reintroduce tensions. Economically, both nations recognize the mutual benefits of collaboration. China has expressed a desire to welcome more Indian investments and commodities into its market, aiming to advance cooperation in science and technology. India, acknowledging the importance of integrating with Chinese supply chains, is considering easing previous restrictions on Chinese investments to bolster sectors such as electric vehicles and semiconductors. The statement "India likes talking to China when needed, while suppressing China on other occasions" reflects India's opportunistic approach to its relationship with China, which is characterized by a mix of diplomatic engagement and assertive containment policies depending on the situation. Here's an explanation of what this means. India engages in dialogue with China when it perceives the need for cooperation or conflict management, particularly in areas such as border disputes. Despite tensions along the line of actual control, LAC, India continues to engage in diplomatic and military-level talks to avoid escalation, as seen in periodic border negotiations. Economic dependencies. India imports significant goods from China, including electronics, pharmaceuticals, and industrial machinery, making it necessary to maintain trade discussions even amid political tensions. Global platforms. On multilateral forums such as BRICS, G20, and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, SCO, India and China find common ground on issues like climate change, economic development, and regional security. On other occasions, India takes measures to counter China's influence and perceived threats, such as economic measures. Following the 2020 Galwan Valley clash, India imposed restrictions on Chinese investments, banned several Chinese apps, and encouraged domestic manufacturing through initiatives like Make in India to reduce dependency on Chinese imports. Military posturing. India has strengthened its military presence along the disputed border areas, developed infrastructure in sensitive regions like Ladakh and Arunachal Pradesh, and conducted joint military exercises with strategic partners like the US, Japan, and Australia, Quad grouping. Diplomatic alliances. India strategically aligns itself with countries wary of China's rise, such as through the Quad, US, Japan, Australia, and India, and fostering closer ties with ASEAN and European nations to counterbalance Chinese influence in the Indo-Pacific. India's approach is shaped by the complex reality that China is both a competitor and a crucial economic partner. India does not adopt an outright confrontational stance but instead follows a strategic autonomy policy, engaging China when necessary while simultaneously taking measures to curb its influence in areas where it perceives threats to its national security and sovereignty. This dual approach could become more challenging as China's influence grows in India's neighboring countries, such as Pakistan, Sri Lanka, and Nepal, and as economic dependencies persist. India will likely continue this nuanced approach, leveraging dialogue when it serves its interests while countering China's strategic moves through military, economic, and diplomatic measures. In essence, it can be said that India's pragmatic opportunism and calculated strategy of maintaining engagement with China is full dilemma afraid of Trump.